Hello everyone, this is Sudhir Kumar Dwivedi, Assistant Professor of Law from Gemtech School of Law, Greater Noida. The topic for today's lecture is accomplice witness under the subject Law of Evidence. First of all, it is important to know who is accomplice and what is the definition of the accomplice. The word accomplice has not been defined anywhere in the Code of Criminal Procedure or in the Indian Evidence Act. An accomplice is a person who, along with another or others, have taken some part, large or small, in the commission of the crime. It is a general term and is used to designate the person whom the police, for some reason, do not arrest but called as a witness for the prosecution. So, generally, accomplice is a person who has participated in the commission of the crime, who has associated in the commission of the crime. And if we further analyze this word, this provision word, then we find that generally accomplice is presented as a witness by the prosecution side. If a person is induced by the police to take part in a crime for the purpose of collecting evidence against other, he is called as a trap witness. We know that. If he is arrested and thereafter given a pardon, he is referred to as an approver. An accomplice, using this term in its general sense to include trap witness and approver, is a competent witness provided by Section 133 of the Indian Evidence Act. According to various judicial decisions, an accomplice is one of the guilty associate or partner in the commission of the crime, or who in some way or other is connected with the commission of the crime, or who admits that he has a conscious hand in the commission of the crime. So generally, who has associated in the commission of the crime is considered as a accomplice. In Chandan versus Emperor, the court defined accomplice as one who is associated with an offender or offenders in the commission of a crime, or one who knowingly or voluntarily helps and cooperates with the others in the commission of the crime. The term accomplice may include all participes criminis, that is, a partner in a crime, a person who is guilty associate in a crime or who has a relation to the criminal act that can be jointly indicated with the principal criminal is an accomplice. So, if you see, the basic theme is that the person who has associated, who has taken part in the commission of the crime, is considered as an accomplice. In R.K. Dalmia versus Delhi administration, it was held by the court that an accomplice is a person who takes part in commission of a criminal act for which the accused is facing trial. He has to be a particeps criminis. However, there are two scenarios where a person can be held to be an accomplice even when he is not. In cases where a person has received stolen property, should be taken as accomplice of the thieves who stole the property. It is quite possible that the person has not taken part in the commission of the same crime. However, he has associated in the finalization of the crime, then also that may be considered as an accomplice. For example, if someone has committed the theft, and after committing the theft, if someone received the stolen property by knowing that this is the stolen property and helps in disposing of the stolen property, then that person is also an considered as an accomplice. Now let's see the competency of accomplice as a witness. According to section 133 of the Indian Evidence Act, an accomplice shall be a competent witness against an accused person, and a conviction is not illegal merely because it proceeds upon the uncorroborated testimony of an accomplice. The evidence of an accomplice, though it is uncorroborated, may form the basis for conviction. The court may presume that an accomplice is unworthy of the credit unless the corroborated in a material particular. The rule of law says that an accomplice is competent to give evidence, and the rule of practice says that it is almost always unsafe to convict upon his testimony alone. Under the English law, the evidence of an accomplice against accused is no evidence at all. So it is general rule of law that accomplice statement may be the basis of the conviction, but the rule of practice is that his statements should be corroborated by some other independent or statement or evidence. According to Taylor, accomplices are interested and always infamous witness whose testimony is admitted from necessity, it being of an impossible without having recourse to such evidence to bring the principal offender to the justice. When an accomplice is not a co-accused under trial in same case, an accomplice is a competent witness. But this competency that has been given to him by the process of law does not relieve him of the character of an accused. No accused should be forced to be a witness against himself, but in case an accomplice is given a pardon on the condition that he is speaking the truth and is not acting under the pressure, and he is not forced to give self-incrimination, as is the rule given in Article 20 sub clause 3 of the Indian Constitution 1950. The law of evidence as laid down in section 306 and 308 of the Code of the Criminal Procedure remains unaffected by this law. When an accomplice is pardoned, he is bound to make a complete and truthful disclosure. If he fails to do so, he would be tried of the charges leveled against him originally, and his statement would then be used against him under section 308 of the Code of the Criminal Procedure. In Harun Haji Abdullah vs. State of Maharashtra, the court laid down that an accomplice is a competent witness and his evidence could be accepted, and if the court feels that there is enough evidence to support the testimony of the accomplice, then an conviction can be based on such testimony. However, in Shankar vs. State of Tamil Nadu, the court held that when an accomplice becomes an approver, he eventually becomes a prosecution witness. An approver's evidence has to satisfy two tests. Firstly, his evidence must be reliable, and secondly, his testimony should be sufficiently corroborated. Categories of accomplices. A person is an accomplice when he participates in the commission of the same crime. In Jagannath vs. Emperor, the court said that participation in crime could be done in multiple ways. There are three broad categories of modes of participation in the crime. Number one, principals in the first degree or second degree. Number two, accessories before the fact or after the fact. So let's first see the principal in the first and second degree. One who actually commits the crime is a principal of the first degree, while a person who is just present and assist in the preparation of the crime of the principal of the of the crime is the principal of the second degree. Undoubtedly, under all the circumstances, these people are accomplices. Principal offender of first degree is a person who actually commits the crime, while the principal offender of the second degree is a person who awaits or aids in the uh, commission of the crime. For example, A administer poison through B to kill C. A is the principal offender in the first degree and B is the principal offender in the second degree. Accessories before the fact or crime. Accessories before the fact, those person who await the commission of a crime are called accessories before the crime. They do not participate in commission of the crime but make necessary arrangements. These are those accomplices who counsel, incite, encourage, or procure the commission of the crime. A person is an accessory before the fact if he participates in the preparation of the crime. They are not an accomplice. For a person to be accomplice, he must participate in the commission of the same crime as the accused person is charged with the trial. A provides facilities or gives financial aid to B to commit murder of D. Here A is necessary before the fact or the crime. Accessories after the crime who receives or protect comfort the person who commit the crime. In simple words, a person who helps the accused in escaping from the punishment is accessories after the act. For example, X commits murder of Y. If Z is knowing that X committed the murder and gives shelter to X, Z is called the accessory after the fact or the crime. Now let's see what is the relation between accomplice and co-accused. The confession of one of the co-accused cannot be used to corroborate the evidence of an accomplice against the other because such a confession cannot be put on a higher footing than the evidence of an accomplice and is the moreover not given on oath or subject to test of the cross examination and is guaranteed by nothing except the peril into which it brings the speaker and which it is generally fashioned relation. Section 30 of the Indian Evidence Act says that the court may consider the confession of the co-accused as evidence. It may be noted that the confession of co-accused must implicate himself as well as some other accused. Further, the confession made at the previous trial will not be relevant. They are jointly tried when they are jointly tried, but for different offences. In those cases, confession is not relevant. Further, the confession should be free confession. The philosophy of Section 30 is that the confession of co-accused gives a degree of sanction to the truth of his confession against others or himself. A confession by a co-accused cannot be treated in the same way as the testimony of an accomplice. The confession of co-accused is not evidence as it is not given in the presence of the accused, nor is it not received on oath, and nor its truth can be subject to the cross-examination. When the accomplice evidence is taken on oath and tested by cross-examination, a higher probability value is thus given to it. The basis of conviction cannot be solely based on the confession of the co-accused. There is a need of corroboration of such evidence. If such evidence is not corroborated and the court feels that the confession of the co-accused is free, and natural, the court can consider it. A conviction cannot be termed illegal merely because it proceeds upon the corroborated testimony of an accomplice, uncorroborated testimony of an accomplice. That's now let's see the accomplice and approver. An accomplice may be approver also. The approver is an accomplice who is tendered pardon by the court on condition that he makes true and full disclosure of the whole circumstances of the case. Approver has been dealt with under the provision of section 306 of the CRPC. He is known under CRPC as an accomplice to whom the court grants a pardon. Thus, an approver is always accomplice, but an accomplice is not necessarily an approver. Section 306 tenders pardon to an accomplice. The approver's evidence is looked upon with great suspicion. He is some way concerned or associated in commission of the same crime, but if found trustworthy, it can be decisive in securing a conviction. Now let's see the evidentiary value of the accomplice. When an accomplice makes a testimony, it is not seen as reliable evidence for the conviction, and it has to be verified with other material evidence. This is called the corroboration. According to Black Law Dictionary, to corroborate means to strengthen, to make a statement or testimony more credible by the confirming facts or evidence. So, corroborative evidence, in a way, is a supplementary testimony to the already given evidence and tending to strengthen the or confirm additional evidence of a different character to the same point. Corroboration does not mean that there should be independent evidence of all facts which have been related by an accomplice. Indeed, if it were required that the accomplice should be confirmed, every detail of crime evidence would not be essential in the case. To count as corroboration, it is not enough that piece of evidence merely supports that accomplice is credible, but must go little further and indicate the accused. That's all about the concept of the accomplice. Thank you.